Welcome into another edition of Region Roundup. I'm James Boyd here with Mike Clark on a beautiful Monday, December 14th. What is this, 2 weeks in a row, Mike, on a Monday?
We are sticking to our schedule, yes, amid all of the holiday preparations and the pandemic and everything like that, but we will not be delayed in bringing you the news of the week. So, yeah, we're, knock on wood, we're staying on schedule, so hopefully we can keep that up.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start off with the game of the week last week, which was Hammond at Westside boys basketball. I had Westside as number 1 in my rankings and Hammond at number 2. Although it was really more of a toss-up, and what better way to prove who is a better team than a head-to-head matchup. And I think anybody who watched that game would have been like, Westside's got this. They were up 11 going into the fourth quarter, and then they were outscored 25-4 in the fourth quarter by Hammond, and Hammond came away with a 10-point win. So it was a really good game. At Westside, they allowed, I believe, the players to have, I think, up to 4 guests come and watch the game. So there were people I saw from Calumet High School and other high schools in the area, 21st Century, obviously parents and things like that. So it wasn't like the typical COVID-19 game where it was just parents. There was a pretty good crowd there considering the circumstances with COVID. And there was certainly some passion in the gym. I was down on the floor sitting opposite the teams' benches. And it was fun. I think there was a really nice setup by them just because they have a really big gym. So they had everyone really, really far back away from the courts. And I have to say, when Hammond went to a press mic, the game changed, and they just ran away with it. So it was a really good game. I think it'll be a growing experience for Westside, but it also validates that Hammond is for real. And I believe that Hammond, is a legitimate 3A contender. And the only thing that could probably stop them from proving that, similar to last year, is COVID-19. So I'm hoping that they get a chance to just close it out as well as the other teams.
Yeah, I love the quote from Reggie Abram.
Yeah.
He wants to be the greatest player in Hammond history. I love that confidence. And obviously as a sports writer, you love quotes like that, that are not generic quotes. So, and that's a big ask to say that you want to become the best player in Hammond history, because there have been some pretty good ones there. Larry Moore, the athletic director, as you wrote about, was an Indiana All-Star. So
alongside Larry Bird, might I add?
Yes, yes, yeah, that was a great little nugget. And there've been a lot of great players. I mean, basketball at Hammond High is just continued standard of excellence. Obviously, we all know that this is the last season of games in that gym, in that building. The new building is looming right next door, and will open next year as Hammond Central. Well, next year now. We're still in 2020, so it'll open in the fall of 2021 as Hammond Central. And I mean, there's so many great storylines for this year. It's been such a tough year, as we've noted, every week, and everybody knows. But the West Side storyline with Jalen Washington returning from multiple injuries, the Hammond storyline of trying to go out, on a high note, and it just, those two storylines collided here, obviously. It is a great thing that Westside has a huge gym. There's a few really big gyms in our area. Obviously, UC Central's got a huge gym. Calumet's got a pretty big gym. So it turns out that for COVID purposes, it's great to have such a big gym, because you can, as you said, you can certainly spread people out a little bit more than you could in some other gyms. But yeah, it's great to see that rivalry, and again, it's kind of sad, I guess. And now that I think about it, I guess this is the last time we'll see that rivalry. So,
Yeah. I talked with them a bit about some of the Hammond players about, this being the last year at Hammond High, wanting to end it on the right note, which is why Reggie gave me that quote about, hey, well, I want to be the best player to come through here. And some people might think like, oh, this 5'8" guard, what are you thinking? But then you look at his resume, which I laid out in the story. Thankfully there weren't a lot of fouls, so I was able to do a little more writing, this week as opposed to others. Pretty clean game, but I was able to look up some stuff, and he's according to Coach Larry Moore Jr., he's on pace to have the most wins as a varsity player in Hammond High history, which says a lot, considering the players that have come through that program. He's been a 4-year varsity starter, and the kid can play. I mean, people can debate who's the greatest, who's the best, but winning is something that you can definitely, pinpoint and say that, hey, I won the most games. That's without having a chance to finish out last year. So he's at 59 wins right now, 59-19, which is a great win percentage over 4 years. They've won 3 consecutive sectional championships. He's been a part of all of them, wants to go for a 4th, and he was telling me, hey, you want to get to state. So these are all realistic goals for Hammond. And I think the one thing I was most impressed with, Mike, is they were down 11, dead in the water, but they weren't rattled, and he said, hey, we just had to get 5 or 6 stops in a row and do it one play at a time. They went to this 2-2-1 press, and quite frankly, Westside just looked panicked. I mean, and then it was kind of like you smell blood and you just pounce on them. And after that, I mean, they just tore them apart with that press. I mean, to outscore somebody 25-4, a team like Westside at that in a fourth quarter was unbelievable. And, Reggie Abram had 10 points in the fourth quarter. Harold Woods had 11 points in the fourth quarter. So it was basically those two carrying the load and, making a lot of the West Side faithful very upset. So it was fun to see the passion. The fans, wanting to be Monday morning quarterbacks and things like that. Hey, you should have did this, should have did that. But the bottom line is, if I'm West Side, I don't panic. Like I said before this podcast started, the next day, Jalen Washington, who had 9 points against Hammond, he had 23 against Southport in a win. He looked really good. I think he was 3 or 4 from three-point land. So he started to get his feel back. I think the biggest thing people need to realize with Westside is that they hadn't played together in, about 2 years. This is their first year in about 2 to 3 years where everyone is healthy. And even then, one of their kids, Billy Muldrew, he was out or with an injury, and he's one of their, glue guys. So, if he gets back healthy, he's another guy with pretty good size and athleticism that could help them. So, if they can just get healthy, get a few more games underneath their belt, it should be fun. And I kind of wish that we could see another, matchup, this time, as opposed to 2 years ago, Westside's 4A, Hammond's 3A, so they won't meet again. But it was a good game. I think it summed up everything you kind of want out of that Gary Hammond basketball. And it was fun for me just because, hey, I got into a game for free, and it was pretty fun to watch. So there you go. It was a long line, Mike, and this guy was telling me, oh, you got to wait in this line. And I was like, I had to, I guess flex my muscle a little bit. I was like, oh, well, I'm with the media, so I'll see you inside. And skipped the line and, got in nice and early, set up, and it was fun to watch.
James, big time with folks in the
region, I know, man. I'm jaded now.
Anyway, you mentioned Jalen had a big game on Saturday, and I know you wanted to talk about it's kind of interesting the way, so you're getting around to see some games now, and you're kind of seeing some of the breakout guys. Reggie Abram is a breakout guy. We know Jalen is going to be a breakout guy. And we talked a little bit about Jamie Hodges Jr. last week when you saw Westside in Michigan City, and he is going off again, and he looks like the real deal. Yeah,
he went off against Andran, scored a career-high 38 points, and missed a layup at the end, which was probably his easiest shot of the night. He missed a layup to give him 40, and when he missed it, the Michigan City bench kind of threw their hands up in the air, like, how could you, after doing, what you did. But he is phenomenal. Seriously. He's 5'8", I believe. 5'9" maybe. Him and Reggie Abram are about the same height. And he just, I feel like once he sees one shot or two shots go through the net, then he's hot almost. Like that's kind of how I just perfect. He has like this ability to get hot and hit just shots that you would tell every other player is a bad shot. He was pulling up from the logo on the floor against West Side. He did the same thing against Andran. And, normally you're thinking, what the heck is this kid thinking? And then, before you know it, he's hit 3 or 4 of those in a row. And then he gets so low to the ground on the dribble. So he's able to get to the rim and create his own shot off the dribble. The kid is phenomenal. I think he's one of the best guards in the region. You can argue about, what you consider a guard. Is like Chris Mantis. Is he a guard or a forward? But as far as like smaller guards, I would put Jamie Hodges right up there, probably at the top. Reggie Abram right there as well. But Mike, I'm telling you, the kid is must-see TV, and Michigan City plays at such a fast pace that it's pretty fun anyway, just getting up and down and, three-pointers and layups and the occasional dunk and, things like that. But, I mean, the kid is very, very good. To score 38 points against a team like Andran, who I believe is one of the better teams in the region. We talk about that, different podcasts, different day. But Andran's a really good team. And they were actually leading that game the entire way, and then it turned into the Jamie Hodges show in the fourth quarter. I believe against Westside he had 15 in the fourth quarter, and then against Andran in the fourth quarter he had 12. But the kid is a stud. He's a stud. I mean, he missed his first 3 or 4 shots, and then after that, it was just the gates of, I don't know, the ocean opened up and he was just shooting into the ocean because everything was going into the net and he was clapping and looking at everybody. And after the game, he was so mild-mannered, and I was like, this is not what you were doing on the court, 20 minutes ago. But it was fun to see him, and Coach Wells said he's like that intensity, that big shot, taker, big shot maker. He's like that every day in practice. And he said, the best part about being a coach in Michigan City is that he gets to see that every day as opposed to us, in the media and us as fans seeing that maybe once or twice a week. So keep an eye out for Michigan City. I think they could possibly win their sectional this year with him leading the way. And it's fun. It's crazy because he's only a sophomore. So, he's got 2 more years of high school basketball. And in my opinion, he's already among the best in the region.
Okay. Now, our weekly feature, unfortunate, I suppose, but it is what it is in this era, is the recap of the latest stoppages, starts, pauses, postponements, and you can take that one away. Yeah,
I'll keep it short just because it's, pretty repetitive. The biggest news is that Michigan City girls basketball is on hold due to COVID-19 for at least the next 2 weeks. They're 7-0, by the way, haven't won their better seasons in a while. Obviously had Trinity Thompson over there. She's in potential to become an Indiana All-Star this year. She's an Indiana Junior All-Star last year. So that's tough news for them. And then on the boys' side, Hobart boys basketball is also on hold due to COVID-19 and other factors. They had delayed starts to their season because of football, and then they have some guys out due to injury. The AD was telling me. So those are 2 more programs that have halted their seasons, and if my math is correct, that's 26 out of the 43 girls basketball teams that have had to stop, and or miss the game this season because of COVID-19, and then the same can be said for 15 of the 44 boys basketball programs. Obviously, they started a little bit later than the girls, but I mean, every day it's a lot to keep up with. And honestly, Mike, what's crazy is last week I didn't even know about Bishop Knoll boys being on hold until we planned to cover the game, and then one of our stringers, David Funk, reached out to the AD hey, I'm going to be there Friday. He's like, oh, the game's not happening, we're on hold. So now whenever I look at the schedule, and this week I'm planning to be at I think 3 or 4 games, and I have to really check and see, okay, have I written about them before? Are they on hold? What's going on? Then obviously checking all the way up until the day of the game, literally the day of the game, to see, are you still playing? So it's kind of tedious, and a lot more tedious than it has been in the past, but it's just the new norm that we're in, and I'm hoping that, something changes for the better.
Yeah, and speaking of the better, quick college note. No offense to VU, but as we know, maybe the region's adopted college basketball team is the Drake Bulldogs. They have a ton of region talent out there, and just wanted to give a quick shout out to Shanquan Hemphill from Michigan City. He is the NBC Newcomer of the Week this week. 2 games, 30 points, 16 boards, 5 assists. Drake is 6-0 for the first time since 1979, 1980. And yesterday, Sunday, as we're recording this, DJ Wilkins, another local guy, hit a career-high 23 in their win over Air Force. So Roman Penn is there. Joseph Yesufu is there. They've got a bunch of guys, obviously.
Yeah, Jonah Jackson from Maryville as well.
Right. So keep an eye on the Bulldogs, and again, our adopted region basketball team off to a great start this year. So
yeah, I mean it's fun because I'm Facebook friends with a lot of these guys from previous stories. So it seems like every other day I'm seeing a Drake post about one of the region guys doing something really cool. Like you said, DJ with a career high. I know Roman Penn has been a really good point guard for them so far this season. And it's refreshing to see some positive news out here, not positive tests, but positive news in regards to, some athletics. And, obviously I'm hoping they can keep it rolling. But, I mean, it looks fun for them, and it's fun to see the support that they receive, not only from their previous coaches, but just from around the region. I know Bo Patton from Maryville, their coach, is really close with a lot of these guys. He's trained a lot of these guys to come back and play. So it's all a big family. So every time anything happens with Drake, I'm seeing, posts from current athletes in high school, parents, friends of friends, and it's really cool to see. Like you said, the adopted region university has some success, and also see some other guys have some success as well. We still got Damian Jefferson, who's at Creighton. They're a top, program in the country, as well as some other guys around the region who are playing college basketball. So it's fun for me to see, and it definitely adds to just the region, I guess, lore when it comes to basketball.
Yeah, and we had said before we started that we're going to close with this, and it's my column from last Friday. Again, check it out on our website. Check it out on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your Times content. And I've been thinking about this one for a while, actually. And basically, it was about the stick to sports crowd. And spoiler alert, not a big fan of them. And, so let me, there's 2 parts to it, as there were in the column, and I'll kind of run down. There's the one part, where this has been a historic year in America for 2 reasons. COVID certainly is one of them. That's a historic year worldwide, obviously, for COVID. And number 2 is the social reckoning that we've been having this year. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and too many more black people who have been killed. And it has led to some really long overdue discussions about racial inequity and racial justice in America, equal justice for all Americans. You've written about this, and as I mentioned in the column, you've had some really powerful Q&As, discussions with some folks around the region. Bo Patton was one of them. There have been quite a few. You can name off a few of the others, but so that's, and basically, since Colin Kaepernick basically stood up for this particular issue, it took a very lonely stand and took a stand that cost him his career, honestly. We've seen much more recognition and much more support for having a dialogue about this, and to hopefully bringing us to a better place as a country where we don't see these things happening over and over again, and just moving on to the next hashtag, the next slogan, because we need to be better than that, and we need to honor these people, the Breonna Taylors, the George Floyds, the Ahmaud Arbery's, by making sure that their families receive justice, and that everybody receives justice, even those who may not be, on the evening news, or, again, may not be hashtags right now. So, and again, there's the stick to sports crowd. Stay away from that stuff. Just tell us about what's going on between the lines, the baskets and the layups and the three-pointers and stuff like that. And, athletes don't live only on the courts. They don't only wear their uniforms. They live in the real world too, just like the rest of us. And they have been increasingly standing up for their rights and for the rights of others, which I think is a positive and heartening development. And I'm just old enough to remember when I was a kid living through the civil rights era, in particular the 1968, which is probably the most pivotal year of that. Dr. King was assassinated. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, within 2 months of each other. And it was a terrible time also in our country, as, in many ways, right now is a terrible time, both because of the pandemic and, some of these other things that have happened that I mentioned. So, and again, the stick to sports crowd, has also spoken up about, did you hear me now?
I can hear you, but you're a little faded.
I'm sorry, did you lose me there?
I did not lose you. I can hear you right now. We're having some technical difficulties, people.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All right, he's back.
My earbuds just died on me. So, but anyway, the COVID-19 stuff that's going on, folks may not want to hear about that. But again, it's part of life in 2020, and again, it is our responsibility to tell you what's going on, and not just the stuff that you may want to hear, but the stuff that you feel like is what we should be reporting. We report everything. We report on the people as well as the games. So, that's pretty much what I wrote, and as I said, I've been thinking about it for a while, and partly in response to some of the stuff that you've written too. Out there.
I read your piece. I always read your pieces, but I read this one, and it definitely resonated, just because I feel like the timing of it was very eerie in a sense. I've been sharing some of the messages I've gotten from people throughout the whole process of talking about racism, race in sports, things like that. Some of the voicemails I get are pretty ridiculous. I'll leave it at that. Not even ridiculous. I actually won't leave it at that. I'll say they're pretty racist. And then I had to block some people, I believe, what was this, yesterday or the day before, who were saying some crazy stuff about me and calling me all out my name and all types of things like that. And, to kind of piggyback off what you said in your article or in your column, I will report every COVID-19 update I can. I will try to cover every game that I can, which is evidenced by the miles on my car and how often I'm at BP. But it's always interesting to see how the conversation or the energy shifts when I'm no longer writing about someone's kids or grandkids or their team or their school or their alma mater, because 90% of the time or 99% of the time, people love, the stories I write, because who doesn't like a story about their kid or their school, their team? But then the energy is not always the same when I write about, the people on these teams and stuff they have to deal with. For example, when I talked to Coach Nelson over at Calumet, he was telling me, hey, I've had instances where my players were called the N-word on the court. And we talked about that. And we talked about how he, tries to mentor his kids and try to remind them that they're still valued and they should still have respect for themselves, even though some people might not give it to them. Did that entire piece, and then, I got a crowd that's telling me, oh, stick to sports. Oh, I don't want to hear this. But it's like, 2 days ago, you loved this story about your team. And now I'm writing about the kids that look like me, frankly, and might come from a different background. And, oh, it's be quiet. We don't want to hear this. But you can't have it like that, at least not as long as I'm writing for the Times. I can't see for anybody else. But I think that your piece was right on. Like, if we're doing our jobs as journalists, we have to reflect or at least shed light on, at least bring attention to what's really going on. The saying is, someone tells you it's raining outside, you don't just take their word for it. You have to go out there and look. So if people are telling you, this is our reality, you can't say, oh, I don't believe that. This is what the law says. Because frankly speaking, the law says a lot of things. But I would be telling a lie if I said we were all treated the same, if things were always the same for everyone in America. That's just not been American history at all. It still isn't. And that's not any bitterness. It's just a fact. So I thought your piece was phenomenal. And like I said, I should probably post it in my Illini crowd so everyone can tell you that you're just taking Coach K's side. But it's a lot going on, and I think that it was a timely piece and frankly one that, again, needed to be written. And honestly, I think for the people who won't listen, they probably never will. Those are some people out there who probably will never change their minds. But for those on the fence or those who really want to explore, hey, why don't I understand this? Why do they keep saying this? I think that was a good starting point for them. So we have to see. And also, Mike, we can touch on this a little bit too, since we're talking about COVID in sports and race in sports. I mean, you look at Keontae Johnson from Florida. I don't know if anybody saw the video of him collapsing on the court. And, there have been reports out there that he was one of the players at Florida, like many others, who tested positive for COVID-19 over the summer, was cleared to come back after rigorous heart testing and things like that. But right now he's in stable but critical condition, and there's really been no updates other than that on what's going on with him. And, I'm praying that he's okay. But number two, I'd really like to know, and I'm sure they will find out eventually, is this COVID-19 related? And if so, how does that change the landscape of sports as we know it? So, here's a healthy guy. He literally had just dunked, and then he walked out after a timeout, and just collapsed face first onto the floor and never really moved again. So, these are conversations we have to have, and we need to continue to put that out there. I know sports are great. I love them. I have a job. We have jobs because of them, Mike. But at the same time, humanity, I would like to think matters a little bit more.
Yeah, that was one thing I did not mention. That we ran Coach K's photo with that column, and I watched the Illinois Duke game, and we know who won that game. Everybody should by now. But after that game, Coach K, during the game, Jay Bilas, because honestly it wasn't much of a game. So he was talking about the need for a national conversation on whether we should be playing college basketball in particular, but just, sports in general. And then after the game, Coach K said similar stuff, basically. With the vaccine coming, should we take a pause and not just try to plow through, because, we're having games, being dropped and added all the time. And maybe it's, I actually wrote this column, a while back about whether you should do it for high school sports, but maybe, now the conversation's coming up about college sports too. And, again, it's like there is a certain segment of our audience that feels like everybody should play, as if nothing was going on, and the things that they keep mentioning. Well, how many kids get it? And even if they do get it, how many die of it? Well, as we saw from the example that you just mentioned, you may not die of it, but you may have some serious consequences from it. And it just kind of amazes me, honestly, that some people's litmus test for this is, well, will you die of it? No? Okay, then do whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's just like, and we're talking about people who are, as you said, in peak physical shape, 20, 21 years old, 22 years old, hopefully with a full, long life ahead of them, 50, 60 years, however many, and we should be talking about, are there going to be side effects that are going to affect these folks, these kids now, down the road when they're adults and, trying to live their lives, in a healthy manner. So anyway, kind of a heavy thing to end on here, but we think it needs to be said. And again, we both feel like, I know that it's important to not just, as much as we love the action that goes on in front of us, as we mentioned at the top of the pod about, Hammond West Side, and then through it about, some of the other guys, athletes who are having great seasons, we love that, we get really energized about that, but that's not the entire story, and we want to tell the entire story, and we need to tell the entire story.
Exactly. That's pretty much it. All we have for this week. A little longer this week, but obviously those last few minutes, I believe, were worth listening to. Just make sure you continue to wear a mask, and we'll check in with you next week after another week of games, hopefully, and other things going on in the region.